Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. We've got about 10 minutes before getting started, so if you are watching on the replay, you can fast forward 10 minutes and skip all of this, or you can hang out with us here in the chat room. Hello, chat room. They're testing 1, 2, 3. They're saying hello. They're testing as well. Let's test here as well. Make sure that we're able to see me. Yes, we can see me here. Hi. Hi, camera 2. Camera 3 needs to have me in it. There we go. So camera 3 looks like that. Camera 4 needs to also have me in it. There we go. Hit the right buttons. We'll just cut there. We didn't even fade in on that one. We just cut. And camera, that's it. There's just camera 4. Although there's also me without this and with this. There we go. A lower third for the call-in show. All right. It all works, people. Cameras are looking good. I've already done the replay. We've already got the recordings going. You can see the Cylons going down there. We're also recording on the live stream side. We don't really need me and me in the same picture, do we? We really just need me like that. There we go. It's a little different. Okay, now we're getting it done. It is alive. Hello, Cincinnati. Tony's in Cincinnati. We've got coffee. We've got presentation would be good if we had one of those. And looks like things are working well. We just need to have, content. That little thing. I have to have content. Do we got a green light? We've got a green light. So this is all good. This is all working. This is a very different, it looks the same to you, at least overall. It's got the same flow and everything to it. Same camera angles, but it's completely different cameras. Everything has changed in the last couple of months, and it's kind of nice that we're settling into a bit of a norm again. That this is normal. Everything's working the way it's supposed to. Although I did have a weird thing happen with the 2 days ago, we did a live stream. I had a weird thing happen with the recording on YouTube. That the recording was done after the show. YouTube recording had it at about, I don't know what it was, 10 frames a second, 15 frames a second. It was weird looking. But I tested YouTube, and this looked fine. This looked like a normal 30 frame a second presentation. So hopefully it looks okay on the YouTube side. Maybe we can look at that. Since we're talking about it, let's go to professormesser.com/live. Just like everyone else, and see if it is indeed live. Let's play it, and then I'll have to turn it down so we don't hear. I'll turn it off audio-wise. We'll turn it on a little bit. I'll turn it off audio-wise. I think audio sounds good. I'm going to wave. Hi, everybody. It takes about 2 or 3 seconds to show up. See, that's great. That's the way it's supposed to look. Now, on the replay, it looked like we were looking at it through some weird, odd, low bandwidth configuration. So I don't know what was going on with that. But there it is. Hello, Washington State. Cleveland is here, where they apparently rock. Mary's here from Chicago. Hi, Mary. We've got, this is by the way, the 221,002 A+ study group. There's Vancouver. Hello, Vancouver. I will be there in Vancouver at the end of May. I have booked my flights. So I will see you in Vancouver. Oh, I won't see you in Vancouver, but I will be in Vancouver. I will see family in Vancouver. That's why I'm going to Vancouver. Taking Mrs. Professor Messer. These lights, these weird lights down here that are going back and forth around and around are a recording, a video recording. There's actually 2 of them. One recording the left side of my screen here is the preview, and the right side is the program. You're seeing the program view right here. So it's recording both of those. And I've also got a recording going in the back room you can't see. In my data center, which is a closet with a 19-inch rack in it and a fan, we've got, but those are recording. It's a Blackmagic video recording system. And it's just recording everything you see. That way, if there is a problem, like there was 2 days ago, there was a problem with the recording on YouTube. And so I grabbed this recording, produced it in a format YouTube would like, uploaded it to YouTube, and that evening you were able to see a proper video. So the video actually from 2 days ago is my local recording. It looks great because it doesn't have all of the YouTube live compression that they do. The video signal that you see right now is just not quite right. It's just not the way you would think it should look in a perfect world. Well, if I'm able to go through and in a perfect world, remove all of that and have it look perfect, then it is perfect. That works out fine. So that's what those lights are. It's my recordings. And if they are spinning around, that means it's actually doing the recording. If I turn them off, they stop spinning around. There's actually a 2 terabyte SSD in there. Actually, this one has a 1 terabyte SSD. And you can put 2 SSDs in, and when one fills up, it goes to the other one. So the one that's recording to is spinning around. And if it goes to the other one, you can pull out the first one, put a fresh one in, and then it jumps back to the first one. So you can constantly record on and on and on to those until you run out of little tiny drives, I guess. So hope we don't have that problem here. I'm only going a couple hours today. We are not going to be doing a 24-hour marathon session, so don't worry. We got welcome everybody, about 4 minutes till we get going. What would you call my current desk setup? What a good question. I don't know. This is where I do everything. This is where I work. So this is my workstation, I guess. This would be the best way to do it. All the video editing takes place here. All the live streaming takes place here. Everything I do effectively takes place here. After I'm done here, I will go. This is a separate place, so it's a separate building. So I go into the house when I'm done. And then, at the end of the day. And there's a laptop in there, and I can do things from there. Hello, Wyoming. There's Cheyenne. Very nice. All the Cheyenne Mountain references and all the other videos I make. Hello, San Jose. Now, which San Jose is that? The one in California, or one of the many other San Joses? So that's what you have to know. St. Louis, Maryland is here again. Welcome. All right, San Jose, California. Haven't been out there in a while either. I used to go out there every other week because I worked for a company out in the valley. I'd stay in Milpitas quite a bit on Tasman Drive. So I spent quite a time going into and out of that San Jose airport. We've got a couple minutes before we get started. By this point, everybody has received their tweet. They've gotten their emails. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes with the study group. Was I a professor? I have done professional instruction in my career. I wouldn't necessarily call it a professor per se. I guess it sort of was. When you're working for a for-profit organization and you're doing instruction, you're not really a professor, but the term professor is sort of a honorarium. It's not an actual formal designation in the United States. Outside the United States, professor actually has a very formal meaning in some places. In the United States, it's just someone who teaches, someone who professes. That's what that is. Okay. Have I ever had to go on binge drinking after a day of work? Well, I've had to go binge drinking during a day of work. I think I've had those days. Who hasn't had those days? The live stream is at professormesser.com/live. There we go. Now you can just link on it. Let's get this going and ready to go. There we nice. That's good. Very good. Just a couple. How are we doing on time, by the way? Less than a minute, and we'll get started on here. Very close. This is all 221,002 today, although there is some overlap, obviously. So if you're studying for the 902, there may be some of this in there. If you go to the live page, you'll see the site to respond to questions, and I'll talk about that as well. Pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you will go exactly to that place. Let's get coffee. Okay. The link to the live stream looks like a pre-recorded video with a live chat below it. Well, it's not a pre-recorded video. It's a live stream with a live chat below it. So It seems like it's pre-recorded. It's not pre-recorded. It certainly is live. It's the top of the hour, everybody. That's how live it is. 12 noon Eastern time. It's time for the study group. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 220-1002 A+ study group for April of 2019. It is live. Although we weren't quite sure in the chat room, is this something that's really live or not? But if you're here at 12 noon Eastern time on April the 4th, then you have made it to the live stream. Thank you for being here. It has to be live because I will ask you live questions during this first hour, and you're going to be answering them live on the internet along with everyone else. So we'll get to see how we do. How much do we know about the 220-1002 A+ exam objectives? My name is James Messer. I'll be your host for this next hour of Q&A. After we're done with this hour of Q&A, we're going to switch around and I'll just open up phone lines and you can ask any question you'd like. It might be a question about the exams. It might be a question about certification in general or your career, or it may be a question on how far have I really gotten on the new gaming system that I've got set up in the house after hours and spending so much time playing Division 2. You never know exactly what I'm doing. So you may just want to ask about that. There's plenty, though, that many people will call in and ask questions about. You're welcome to call in, too. And during the second hour, I'll tell you exactly how you can call in and do all of that. First, let's talk about what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to talk about Q&A. I will, of course, be showing you in a moment how you can participate live on the internet in real time and answer those questions. We'll talk about all of those things. Don't forget, by the way, to subscribe to YouTube, especially important now if you are watching this live, because we're in the process of creating the 220-1002 video course, and we are uploading videos as we go. So if you are subscribed, you have subscribed to my YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube, and then you click the bell. As soon as I upload them, you're going to get notification. There are new 220-1002 videos there already. If you were here a couple of days ago for the live stream, then you know we're already done with the 220-1001 course. The course is completely finished. So you're more than welcome to go enjoy all of those videos there as well. And don't forget about the daily pop quiz question. That's on Twitter. You can find it at professormesser.com/Twitter. We've also got the chance for you to earn 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit. More than happy to do that. Of course, you don't need me to do that for you, but as a little bonus, I will send you an email that I have digitally signed that says that you watched this 1 hour. So sometimes you can use that for CompTIA. You can use it for other things as well. Sometime in this first hour, I will tell you how to earn that. So you have to listen in, because if you don't listen in and you miss that, then you aren't able to earn at least the digital signature from me, the digitally signed email from me. We're going to talk about A+ today. And we're in this weird place right now with A+, that you could take either the 900 series exams or you could take the 1000 series exams. So let's talk about what both of these are right now, because we're in this overlap period. The 220-901 and 902 were released on December the 15th, 2015. So they've been out for quite some time. Both of those exams retire on July 31st, 2019, at least the English language version of these. And so after that point, can't take the 900 series anymore. Now you have to take both of these to pass and earn your certification. You can't take the 901 and the 1002. You can't take the 1001 and the 902. They have to be both the same family. So if you have currently been studying for the 900 series, keep doing that as long as you know you're going to be able to pass both of these exams by July 31st. That's the important consideration. Right now, you can also take the 1001 and 1002. Notice that was released in January. Brand new series of exams, but now you have 3.5 years or so before those ever are retired. So you've got a choice you need to make right now about which set of exams you go with. And it's a relatively important choice, because not only is your time involved here, but money is involved here. You don't want to take exams and spend the money and then not be able to take and pass the second exam and then have to start all over again. I would not want you to do that either. Now, for both the 900 and the 1000 series exams, it's exactly the same format and exactly the same number of minutes per exam, the same number of scoring per exam. Everything is exactly the same. So, for example, the 220-1001, on a scale between 100 and 900, you have to earn a 675. And for the 220-1002, you have to earn a 700. So you've got a couple of options there. Now, the good part about this, by the way, if you are in the middle of your 900 series and you think, I'm not going to make it, I have to shift gears now and move from 900 to 1,000. This is going to be insurmountable. This is an awful thing to have. Actually, not so bad. There's only a 20% difference. 20% of the content on the 1000 series is new from the 900 series. Now, that means that 80% of the 1001 and 1002 exam is effectively the same as what you were studying for the 900 series. So if you do have to shift gears, it's really not so bad. It's really not bad at all. Now, you'd think that's not very much, but if you think about it, the things haven't changed in 3 years. An HDMI interface is the same HDMI interface that there was 3 years ago. Windows 7 and Windows 8 are the same Windows 7 and Windows 8 there was 3 years ago. The only thing different, for example, on the 1002, now there's Windows 10. So those types of things have changed through the years. And that Windows 10 is that extra 20% of the exam, plus a lot of other things, but you get what I'm saying. You have to kind of think about that. So for those of you trying to figure this out, I know I've talked a lot about this one piece of information, but these questions come up quite a bit, and I want to be sure everybody's aware of it. And now if anybody ever asks the question, I can point them over here and figure out those details too. Most of the information on the 1001 and 1002 exam, effectively the same. Today we're going to focus on the 1002, which is also called the Core 2 exam, where we will talk about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. By the way, if you are watching this and you'd like an audio version to listen to on a replay, and you have a podcasting program that automatically downloads your podcasts, so you hop in your car and all of your podcasts are immediately available to you without having to be online, you can also do the same with these study groups, both the A+ Network Plus and Security Plus study groups. It's not really both. That's all of my study groups are available at professormesser.com/podcast. You can stream it live there, or you can take that RSS feed and put it right into your podcast. You can also check all of the big podcasting indexing that you'll find out there. It's probably listed. And if it isn't listed in the podcasting index that you use, let me know, and I'll find a way to get it there as well. It's on the Google index. It's in Spotify. It's in everywhere I could think of, but there's probably one or two I missed. So you just let me know. Also, if you come back in a day or two and you're watching the replay on YouTube, if you pop open and look at the description of the video, you'll find that my marketing manager, Lori, has gone through every single minute of this video and has time-stamped everything. So if you ever need to jump to a particular question or a particular answer or a particular call that you heard, they're all listed there. She's done a lot of that work for us. So thank you, Lori, and hopefully some of you have been able to take advantage of that. Today we're going to do Q&A. Let's do some Q&A. The way you do this is you pop open a new browser window, and in that new browser window, you go to professormesser.com/QA. That will take you to a service called Socrative, and you will see a question waiting for you if you type that in at professormesser.com/QA. There's also an app that you can download, the Socrative Student app. That student app you can get on your favorite app store. It will probably ask you for a room name, and that room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't see any questions there waiting for you. And there is indeed a question there waiting for you, which is the important part of this. Here's the question that is waiting for you right now that says, which command would be the best choice for changing the ownership of a file on a Linux server? Here's your first question. This is a question actually from last month. So this is our rewind question. We're getting here to see, well, first, what do you remember from last month? Yeah, not much, me either. But secondly, we're making sure that you can get in and see the questions and everything's working the way you can expect and have that to work. Now, you've got some options for here. Your question is asking, which command would be the best choice for changing the ownership of a file on a Linux server? Your options are chmod, dd, mv, chown, and PWD. And as you can see, we can in real time see exactly what the options are that people are choosing. For instance, 68% of you have said chown, 24% of you have said chmod, and then it's single digits for DD, MV, and PWD. Now, all of these, of course, are real, actual Linux commands. So it really could be any one of these. Some of you are probably familiar with this particular one, but you can see that we're looking at the answers as they're coming in. We get a feel for exactly what you're answering, and we can go through each one of these and determine which one is right and why the other ones were not right. Now, in this particular case, we're looking for changing the ownership of a file on a Linux server. The correct answer there is chown. Is exactly what you would use. And of course, last month we went through this. You're welcome to go back to those questions we had last month and look at the details where we went through each one of these. But hopefully now you've been able to see exactly what the different options are and what you can do for these particular pieces, these particular questions. Let's now skip ahead and look at some other things. We're going to skip ahead to, here we are, to this, which is today's Q&A. Now, one of the things, by the way, that you may not realize, and some people have already mentioned this in the chat room this month, is when you sit down for the A+ exam, you're probably going to be ready for some multiple choice questions. And you will get quite a few multiple choice questions on the exam, just like the one we just had, where you get a question and there's 4 or 5 options there that you could choose from. But there are first a handful of questions you will get on the exam that are anything but multiple choice. They are fill in the blank. They are drag and drop questions. They may be asking you to perform a function at a command line of an operating system. They may be asking you to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what the performance-based question is going to be, but you do know that it's not going to be multiple choice. So one of the first things we do on the study group is we have one of these performance-based questions. And I have a performance-based question for you today. And this one is, it looks like it's a matching question. I'm going to quickly look over myself and say, well, I've got me on the screen twice looking at myself, at what these things happen to be. So there we go. I've got them on the screen now, and we can look at them. This one happens to be a matching question. There we go. There was too much of me on the screen there. That was too much of me. Here's our matching question of the month. This is our performance-based question of the month, and it asks, match the Windows utility to the function. And I've got 4 Windows utilities, and I've got 7 functions. So as I put in here, some functions will not have a match. So we have 4 different Windows utilities. I want 4 different functions to go with this. Now, if you think they match up exactly as they are right now, you could put into the fill in the blank that I have for you, 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. It's not like that, though. I'm just giving you an example. We know you wouldn't do that. This is a little bit more of a matching question than that. But let's go through the matching, especially for those of you listening on the podcast side. So let's have a look. We've got 4 Windows utilities. Those Windows utilities are Device Manager, Services, Local Users and Groups, and Event Viewer. So those are your 4 Windows utilities: Device Manager, Services, Local User and Groups, and Event Viewer. And here are, through A through G, these different functions. Option A is restart a print spooler. Option B is to identify the error code associated with an application crash. Option C is update a printer driver to the latest version. Option D is gather CPU utilization metrics over a 24-hour period. E is to perform a comprehensive RAM test. F is disable the guest account. And G is view a list of printers that are not ready to print. So that is our drag and drop, or I guess our matching function for this particular performance-based question. And maybe it's one that you're probably familiar with seeing, these different options that are available. So for Device Manager, Services, Local User and Groups, and Event Viewer, which one of those match to restarting a print spooler, identifying the error code associated with an application crash, updating a printer driver to the latest version, gathering CPU utilization metrics over a 24-hour period, performing a comprehensive RAM test, disabling the guest account, and viewing a list of printers that are not ready to print? So that's what we want to do, is figure out all of those. That is our list of 4 things we have to match. Some of you are trying to figure out these details right now, and I'm noticing a lot of you have already answered. I've got to fill in the blank here, and I've got this set up so you don't have to type it in. You can just say 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and make it easy on yourself so you don't have to type all of that in exactly the way it is. And I can watch them coming in as we go. This, by the way, is all coming directly from a single video for the 1002 exam. In fact, there's a similar video for the 902 exam. So if you're somebody who's studying for both the 1002 and the 902, either one of those, this question is going to apply to you as well. The 900 series and the 1000 series does have a lot of overlap. So that certainly makes sense. Some of you are asking, can you use CEUs from a 1000 core series study group to add to your 900 series cert? You sure can. If you look at the certification CEU requirements, the information has to be similar. Doesn't have to match, doesn't have to be associated with a particular version. If you're studying Windows on one, and you're studying Windows in another class, then it certainly applies back to your 900 series CEUs. So yes, it would apply. Let's see how we did with this one. Let's see how they match up. So here we're going to go through each one, and let's start with number 1, Device Manager. Device Manager, if we look through our list of things, the thing that Device Manager would best fit is to update a printer driver to the latest version. One of the features, just one of the many features of Device Manager, is the ability to upgrade drivers from inside Device Manager. Now, sometimes the printer manufacturers and hardware manufacturers will make this easier on you, and they will create a program that you simply run at the Windows desktop that does this as well. But sometimes you do have to jump into Device Manager and manually install that printer driver, or hardware driver itself. So that's something you'll commonly do in Device Manager. Our second option was services. A good use of services is to stop and start these services that might be running on our printer. One common service is a print spooler. So restarting the print spooler is something you would indeed commonly do inside of services. So the answer to number 2 is A. Number 3 is local users and groups. And one of the things you can do with local users and groups is to disable a particular user, like the guest user. That's not a bad idea. The guest account is one that very commonly is automatically disabled, or we manually go in and disable because we don't want these extra accounts available for people to log into. And lastly, we have the event viewer, number 4. And the event viewer is associated with B. Identify the error code associated with an application crash. Generally, application and operating system errors are written to the event viewer. So if somebody says, I ran into this problem yesterday, put something on the screen. I didn't write it down. Why should I do that? Since that would help you. But that's okay. What time did this happen? Oh, it happened at this particular time of the day. So now you can go back to the event viewer and look for the errors that may have occurred during that time frame. So very quickly to review, Device Manager matches up with update a printer driver to the latest version. Services has you restarting a print spooler. Local users and groups allows you to disable the guest account. And event viewer allows you to identify the error code associated with an application crash. So that's a very good example of a matching question that you might be faced with on the actual exam. It's certainly the style is what you would run into. I didn't write any of the questions for the exam, so I don't know what the questions on the exam look like, but I do know their style, and this certainly fits the style of performance-based questions that you may run into on the actual exam. So that does come in handy. Let's go back to doing some more. Oh, by the way, very quickly, at the bottom of this screen, of the answer screen, you'll always find where this information is stored, so you can look at this later on if you want to. This is from my 220-1002 exam, section 1.5, if you're following in your exam objectives. And when this video is released, it will be called Windows Administrative Tools. So hopefully by the time you're watching this on a replay, you'll know exactly which video to go to learn more information about these Windows Administrative Tools. Let's do some more Q&A. Let's do a multiple choice question. Let's jump into that now with this multiple choice question that asks, which control panel applet can be used to manage usernames and passwords? Which control panel applet can be used to manage usernames and passwords? Your possible answers are Credential Manager, Keychain, System, Authentication Center, and App Locker. Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. Please, no comments or questions, or well, you can ask questions, but no tips or hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to answer this question. And I'm watching the answers come in. Those of you already familiar with these control panel applets. Which control panel applet can be used to manage username and passwords? Is it Credential Manager, Keychain, System, Authentication Center, or App Locker? Which one? I got to figure those out. Hopefully you're familiar with these applets. You, of course, need to know these applets for the exam. So this is one that you will need to focus on. I'm going to take a sneak peek and see how folks are doing with this one. One of the challenges, by the way, I found with this exam is that you not only have to know Windows, but you have to know these types of things in Linux and in Mac OS. So there's quite a bit that you have to go through and remember for the exam. And a lot of the names will overlap with each other. Some will be quite different, but they'll start blending together after a while. And you'll sometimes refer to the wrong program in the wrong operating system. You'll mix them up quite easily. So make sure you're familiar with that as you're learning all of these. That's why I always say it helps to have a lot of hands-on. Work with the operating system. Run some of these applets that are in control panels so that you become more familiar with them being there, and your mind can fire that synapse that takes you back to the time when you actually ran the program and clicked on it to have all of those things there. We've got a number of answers coming in. I want to give you a couple more minutes. Stop Googling this. Stop. I can watch the numbers come in. There's no Googling. No Googling. Do not Google. I need a lower third here. No Googling. Kind of goes across the screen. Maybe the Google logo with a no. That couldn't possibly cause a problem when I upload it to YouTube. Me with a no Google? No, that can't possibly be an issue. No one will mind. That's not a thing I have to worry about in my career. Which control panel applet can be used to manage usernames and passwords? Let's see how we did. Well, 52% of us, just over half, the bare majority, have said Credential Manager. 22% that said System, 15% said Authentication Center, and 10% said Keychain. Nobody said App Locker, which I thought was just a lock. That's absolutely what people would choose, would be App Locker. But no, 53% Credential Manager, 22% System, Authentication Center is 15%, and 10% said Keychain. So which one would it be? Which one would you use in a control panel applet to manage usernames and passwords? Well, one of the best places you can go to manage these credentials in Windows is the Credential Manager. Who knew that was there to be able to manage usernames and passwords? This is really helpful if you start to save a lot of usernames and passwords in your browser. You certainly should have a different username and password for every site you visit. At a minimum, a different password for every site that you visit. But you can put other Windows credentials in here as well, like certificates. This is very common for storing certificates for a VPN, being able to manage these pieces. Yes, and if you've never used Credential Manager before, like some people in the chat room are saying, this is a great place to go to start managing these. You can start to add credentials into this, change some of the generic credentials that are used, be able to make sure that you know exactly how Windows is storing this. And as other people are saying, this can also be a challenge because they say the main source of lockouts is Credential Manager, and you're not wrong. Whenever the credentials are wrong and you've got some type of automated system that automatically fills in credentials, it's going to automatically fill in the wrong credentials. And after 3 to 5 to 10 times, it just locks people out. And then you have to start over again. But that's why we have job security. That's why we have those positions available. We're more than happy to help people with their credential issues. Simply give us a call at the help desk at 1-888-HELP-ME, HELP-ME, HELP-ME. And we'll be glad to So that's why we have these jobs. So a lot of people get very frustrated over the fact that they've locked themselves out again. You should be happy. You should, oh, I'm so happy you're calling me with a problem. I'm more than happy to take that paycheck and do that. So if you did answer Credential Manager, the 51% of you got that one spot on. You are absolutely correct. It was Credential Manager. There is no Authentication Center. Kind of made that one up, but it sounded so good. It should be called Authentication Center, but it is not. 17% of you chose that one. 21% of you chose System. There's a System utility in the control panel under the administrative tools. No, it's just in the control panel, System, but that doesn't allow you to manage usernames and passwords. You can configure some system parameters inside of that. You can assign what the name of your workstation is. You can change your work group or the domain you happen to be part of inside of System, but it has really nothing to do with usernames and passwords. It doesn't help you at all. And Keychain actually is a utility that does allow you to manage usernames and passwords, except it's in Mac OS. And I specifically listed here which control panel applet is able to do that. Mac OS doesn't have a control panel. They have a configuration. So there's two different things that you would have to worry about. On the system preferences side of Mac OS is where you would manage usernames and passwords inside of your keychain. So close with that, but half of you got Credential Manager right, which, by the way, is what I'm shooting for. This would be no good if everybody just got the question right. You wouldn't be learning anything. But now you know if a question ever comes out about managing credentials, it's Credential Manager, an easy one to go with. Let's do another question. We've got one here available. Here's the question we're going to do next. And it asks, a user is installing a driver for a new mouse, but the installation fails before the driver is installed. Which of these would be the most likely reason for, let's say, this issue? Here, we can see the whole question right here for this issue. What would be the most likely reason for this issue? I definitely have an issue between my systems that I have to figure out with my issues. There we go. You'll be able to see it right now. Is the issue that the mouse is not currently connected to the computer? Is it that the mouse driver is corrupted? Is it that the mouse is incompatible with the user's operating system? Is it that the user does not have the proper permissions? Or is it that the mouse is connected during the driver installation? So we have to parse this out. Let's read this very carefully, where the question's asking, a user is installing a driver for a new mouse, but the installation fails before the driver is installed. Which of these would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it that the mouse is not currently connected to the computer? The mouse driver is corrupted? The mouse is incompatible with the user's operating system? The user does not have proper permissions, or the mouse is connected during the driver installation? Which one would that be? Hopefully you're familiar with these driver installations. You're able to answer this question. If you'd like to answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. This is one that does come in handy. If you think you know the answer, go to that professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer the question there. Please no answers in the chat room and no hints in the chat room. We want to pretend that we're sitting right in front of the question that is posed with us on the exam. We're sitting in front of the monitor. There's nobody we can turn to. We can't phone a friend. We can't 50-50. We have to figure this out on its own. Although Lewis in San Diego is asking, well, how often do you have to install drivers for a mouse? Well, if all you're doing is clicking two buttons and pointing, you probably don't have to install any special drivers. Drivers are already installed for you. The generic drivers work fine. But I have my mouse has 7 buttons on it. Or you may have a mouse that has a lot of different features on it to be able to change the scaling. You might have a gaming mouse. Well, all those special features on that mouse will have no compatibility with your generic driver. The generic driver has no idea about those crazy features on your mouse. So you have to install a mouse driver to make that happen. So you may find that's more often than you think being able to do that. So absolutely be familiar with those pieces. Maybe that will help you through this. The most likely reason. So let's see how we did with this one. Now that we've talked about installing the mouse driver, I've been through this one myself. And we're a little torn. We did not get a majority answer on this one. We've got almost a tie for first. 33% of you said the user does not have the proper permissions. 29% said the mouse is incompatible with the user's operating system. 20% of you said the mouse driver is corrupted. 13% said the mouse is not currently connected to the computer, and 4% said the mouse is connected during the driver installation. Which one is it? Now, if we go with at least, it's not a majority, but the highest number was the user does not have the proper permissions. Is that the one we're really thinking about as far as drivers are concerned? Well, it certainly is something you should think about when you're installing drivers, because in Windows, you have limited permissions to be able to do anything at that level of the operating system. You can run your spreadsheets, you can load your word processing programs, you can use a browser and do all of those things that a normal user would do. But as soon as you try to do something that goes above and beyond what a normal user should be doing, and installing drivers is one of those things, you will find that you do not have the proper permissions. And that's why you'll find when you're installing drivers, you will be specifically asked to run the installation as an administrator. You need elevated rights and permissions to be able to do this. And that's why as you're looking through installing drivers, installing services, installing anything that's going to change the overall function of that operating system, the OS is not going to let you do it unless you insist that, nope, I'm an administrator, run as administrator. It will probably prompt you for your username and password if you do not have admin rights already. And then you can run that. To be able to run as administrator, you would right-click on the application and choose Run as Administrator. You can also use this keystroke, which is really nice, Control-Shift-Enter, and it will run it as administrator. It's a very quick way to do it. So you can type it in at the search prompt, and without even using any keystrokes, do a Control-Shift-Enter, and it will run it as an administrator. So it's a very fast way if you're someone who focuses at that command line to be able to do that. So if you did answer, those 34% of you, the user does not have the proper permissions, that's what it is. You don't have the proper permissions. So the user not having the proper permissions is the correct answer here. That is the most likely reason for this issue. Most likely. Now, why are the other answers not more likely than that one? Let's step through them. 28% of you said the mouse is incompatible with the user's operating system. Well, normally, if you were to run a program or install a driver that was not associated with the operating system, you would get a message that told you this mouse is incompatible with the user's operating system. It would be very clear that you're running a driver that's not designed for this OS. This is not going to work for you. Windows will give you that prompt, and usually the program you're using to install it would give you that prompt as well. This says the installation failed, but it didn't give you any more detail than that intentionally. If we know that the most likely reason is associated with the proper permissions, we knew that it probably is not the case that it is incompatible with the user's operating system. That is a much less likely issue that you would run into. Hopefully you're smart enough to grab the right drivers. I think you are, to be able to do that anyway. 19% of you said the mouse driver is corrupted. And when Windows starts to run a program or starts to load information, it does check to be able to run that as corrupted. And then it won't even run that application at all. Won't even start the installation for installing that. It would tell you this program, this driver we've got doesn't work properly. The 15% of you said the mouse is not currently connected to the computer, and 5% said the mouse is connected during the driver installation. And that certainly could be the case that the driver installation is not ready for either one of those. But commonly, you will have the program tell you, make sure the mouse is not connected or make sure the mouse is connected during this driver installation. So it's one of those that would allow that to happen. Now, some people in the chat room are saying, no, if you don't have permissions, the installation won't even start. And that's not necessarily true, especially if the program is designed to start up and start the process, and then suddenly in the middle of this realizes, oh, I've got to change a system driver, and the whole thing fails at that point. Or even worse, it goes through the process and finishes, doesn't give you an error, but did not actually install the driver, which is something that happens as well. And all because you did not run this as administrator. This happens all the time. There was a program that I used to run as a systems engineer that would install a service onto Windows that would then access Active Directory and pull information from Active Directory. The installation program would only install the service if you ran it as administrator. If you did not run it as administrator, it finished the installation. It did not fail in the middle, but it also didn't install the service. So it's one of those that's a little bit more of a challenge to have that there. So running it as this is really the important and proper part of this. Make sure you're familiar with what the options are and being able to do that. Works pretty well to have those things there. Make sure. This is a good thing to know when installing any drivers, when installing any third-party applications, when installing anything into Windows. Check with the documentation and see if you should be running this as an administrator. And you will be able to avoid this issue whenever that particular kind of thing happens. So make sure you're familiar with all of those. So those of you that did answer, the user doesn't have the proper permissions, 35%, that is the most likely reason for this issue. Well done with that. There is so much information you have to know on the A+ exam. We've gone through just a little bit of it today. You've got challenges knowing all of these details about hardware and networking and laptops and printers and all the security issues that you need to know about, everything relating to mobile devices and troubleshooting. And all of this is in my videos because I follow the CompTIA exam objectives to the letter and have all of those there. And I highly recommend that you take notes as you're going through these videos so you can refer back to those notes later. Of course, you may not have time to go through every video. I've got a lot of graphics, a lot of text, a lot of information and tables. Sometimes this can be time consuming to be able to do that. This is one where it might be useful to have another set of notes available, so I made some for you. These are my 221,001 and 221,002 course notes. And all of these course notes are full, complete. They cover all of the exam objectives, even though we're still in the process of producing the videos for the 221,002. The course notes are already done. The entire course has been written. I'm just now shooting the video part. So that allows you to take advantage of this and have access to both the 221,001 and the 221,002 course notes. They are PDF files. This is the PDF right here for the course notes that goes through every video and every topic from the course. There's the Windows upgrade charts. There's the information on Windows on the enterprise, installing operating systems, installing and upgrading Windows. It's all in here in these course notes. Everything that you need from every video is put there. Also, and this one was kind of important from Mrs. Professor Messer, told me, well, those are good to have digitally, but I like a book. So I made a book for you. Here's the book of the course notes. It's exactly the same information as you just saw. It's the same charts and the same images and the same bit of information. It's just in a physical form. That's the only difference. There's nothing special or new about that, but some people like to have an actual book. And I have to tell you, it is nice to be able to just flip through this and make notes and write things and see what's on there. It is a full color book. It is perfect bound like you would find in any soft cover book. It's a nice high quality book. So if you're looking for something that can really give you a good idea, a good roll-up of everything. It doesn't replace a textbook. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace hands-on or Q&A, but it's a nice summary of everything that you need at the end when you're ready to finish up your studies. You can find out more about that at professormesser.link/1000notes. And of course, you'll be able to do that as well. By the way, if you get the physical version, I give you the PDF for free. So that's something you have to wait for me to ship this to you with the physical version, but at least you can download the PDF immediately and start getting that information into your brain so you'll be ready for the exam. This is also a good way to support the website. I don't take any type of donations on the site by design, but I absolutely need some way to keep the lights on and need some way to at least keep the family fed. And this is the way we do it. I want to thank you for your support in making all of this work. We would not be able to do this without you. Find out more about this down professormesser.link/1000notes. Let's do some more Q&A. I've got another question available for you. This is one dealing with a user in the receiving department. The user in receiving logs into their Windows computer and they receive this message, quote, "The user profile service failed the logon. User profile cannot be loaded." That's the error. So the question is, which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? So this is clearly we're now troubleshooting and having to figure this out. But we have some options for you. So what of these would be the best way to resolve the issue? Would it be delete the user's profile, reboot and log in as domain administrator, start Windows in safe mode, perform a Windows update and restart, or reinstall Windows from the original media? So let's go through that again for those of you listening on the podcast especially. Here's the question. When a user in the receiving department logs into their Windows computer, they receive this message, quote, "The user profile service failed the logon. User profile cannot be loaded," end quote. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Would it be delete the user's profile, reboot and log in as domain administrator, start Windows in safe mode, perform a Windows update and restart, or reinstall Windows from the original media? So you've got 5 options there. Which of those would be the best way to resolve this issue? Please, no answering in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. Although, as Carlos says, I was looking for a different answer. Actually, that does happen quite a bit on the exam. In fact, one thing you should be looking for on the exam is they will sometimes ask you a question like this for troubleshooting, and the thing that is the most common troubleshooting step to go first isn't listed. This is one that came up recently. I think it was actually a couple days ago in the study group. Maybe it was something else we were looking at. But they made a point to say the best way to resolve this issue isn't listed. And it could possibly be because that option's not available to you. Let's say, for example, that the keyboard is no longer working on a system. And one of the first things you check is to see if the keyboard's plugged in. That's one of the first things you would check. Is it plugged in? But that wasn't one of the options. And they said, well, why isn't the most obvious option, the thing you should be doing, not listed? Well, because they don't want you to do that. Maybe you don't have access to the keyboard. Maybe this is a kiosk and the kiosk is handled by someone else. You're in charge of the operating system. You're not a hardware guy. That's the hardware department. You don't have access to get back there to the keyboard, so you can't check it. It's not even listed as an option. That is about as real world as you can get with these questions. So just because something isn't listed, the reason for that is they don't want you going with the obvious answer. They're giving you a very specific question which says, which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Which means you only have these 5 options available to you. And a lot of people think that there should be other options here. There should be the more specific option. There should be a less specific option. And it doesn't work that way. They're trying to see if you can think about it in this context. So that's the important part of making that happen. So in fact, yes, the second best option is often the one you need to think about when you're looking through and trying to figure out which of these it's going to be. That's not a bad way to look at it. So let's look at this particular answer and see how we did with this one. I think this would be a good one to look at. How do we do? Let's click it. We're not even sure. We are almost split down the middle 4 ways. The only thing that people say it's definitely not at 0% is reinstall Windows from the original media. So we got 4 to choose from. So 39% of you said reboot and log in as the domain administrator. And then we basically have a tie for second, a 3-way tie for second, which is delete the user's profile, start Windows in safe mode, and perform a Windows update and restart. So one of these is going to be the right one. And we definitely don't have a majority here. We're not exactly sure which one it could be. Let's very quickly go back to look at the question. It's a very specific error that we're getting on the screen. It says, the user profile service failed the logon. User profile cannot be loaded. So we know already it's not something relating to your hard drive. You're not having a memory error. It's not a video driver issue. There's a huge number of things we know it's not. In fact, everything here seems to focus on user profile. The term user profile was listed twice in this error message. The user profile service failed the logon. User profile can't be loaded. There seems to be a problem with the user profile. And this is actually a very common problem in Windows. For people who are system administrators, I would say at least 19%, no, how many? At least 20% of you who are system administrators have run into this problem before. It is a common problem in Windows, unfortunately. It's it's not in your top 5, but it's certainly one that you will run into. There is a profile associated with the user. This profile contains all of the information specific to that user. And when you log into a Windows domain, it pulls the profile up, configures things in your Windows so that every user gets their proper Windows screen. The problem is that those profiles can become corrupted. And the message that you will receive when someone tries to log in and their profile becomes corrupted, the message is the user profile service failed the login. Service profile cannot be loaded. And if you're someone who has run into this before, you know you've got an issue. Well, one of the things you can do is you can rebuild the profile. It's effectively a process where you delete the existing profile, and then whenever the person logs in again, it forces the profile to be rebuilt. Now, somebody in the chat room says, yep, this happens all the time. And it does. And so you will find it's not something as easy as just copying a file over. You have to make a couple of changes, but it's something that you do the same thing every time. You log in with the domain admin, then you rename the user's name folder, you export the user's registry, you delete the registry entry associated with the profile, and you restart the computer. So there is a couple of things that you have to do. Now, does this lose information on the prior profile? It definitely does. This particular process, as you see here, absolutely does. But generally, the information associated with the profile was not anything that could not be recreated anyway. So this is one that does come in handy to be able to do that. So make sure you think about doing that. Yes, you would rename the user profile first and then delete the key from registry entry. So that's a good way to do it. Now, one of the things that's very important when you're rebuilding these Windows profiles is you indeed follow that step. So that's the way you would go about the rebuilding process for making this happen. This is one that if you do run into this, it's a pretty quick fix, and you get really good at doing it because you run into it quite a bit. Okay, hold on a second. Click, 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 click. All right, we've done it. Now log back in. And when the person logs back in, it'll rebuild their profile and everything should be working properly. So the best way to resolve the issue would be to delete the user's profile. In fact, that's what we would do. You're effectively removing the existing profile so that a new profile can be rebuilt. Now, 40% of you said to reboot and log in as a domain administrator. Well, that doesn't actually resolve the issue. Just logging in as a domain admin doesn't change anything. Now, during the process of actually deleting the user's profile, you will indeed log in as a domain administrator, although you don't have to reboot to do that. So the best way to resolve this issue is to actually delete the user's profile. That's what is the resolution to this problem. Remove the existing profile so that you can rebuild a new one. You've also got starting Windows in safe mode. 19% of you said that. Starting Windows in safe mode won't change this because your profile will remain corrupted. It doesn't uncorrupt the profile. And performing a Windows update and restart will certainly make your Windows more up to date, but it doesn't fix the profile. And this is where we're already starting to see people say this in chat room. Trick question. No, because you don't know the answer doesn't mean that the question was a trick question. You don't get to do that. This is very clear on the things that we're asking here. It's a very specific question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? So that's the one you want to go with. You absolutely want to figure out what is the way to fix the issue. Not what are things you can do in the meantime that have something to do during the resolution process. That's not going to help you either. So this is one where focus on the resolution, especially with these troubleshooting questions, and you're going to be doing just fine. Which would be the best way to resolve? Yes, doesn't ask what your first step is. This is not one of those, and you will get questions on the exam that say, what is the first step you would take to the resolution of this problem? Okay, then maybe logging as a domain administrator might be the right answer. But that wasn't the question. So make sure you're very specific and you follow the questions very specific. It's not a trick if it's right there written on the screen for you. It's a trick that you may not have known it. I asked you something you didn't know. That was tricky. Yes, I'm absolutely going to try to ask you things you don't know in these study groups as well. And hopefully now you're familiar with that whole profile issue. That's actually a new thing that's asked in the study groups or in the exam objectives for the 220-1002. That was not a 902 question. That was a brand new 1002 question. That's from section 3.1, troubleshooting solutions in your exam objectives. You can go there and try to find out more information about all of those issues. Let's do another question. We've got some time. Do one more Q&A here. Let's see how this one would go. This question, it's a long one. You'll get a lot of long questions on your exam. This question asks, a virtual machine has crashed overnight due to corrupted data and will not restart. The system administrator has recovered the entire system on a new virtual machine using a single process that recovered the entire VM to its previous state. Which of the following would best describe this recovery process? Would it be a file level recovery? Would it be an encrypted restore? Would it be an image level recovery? Would it be a server patch? Or would it be a hypervisor restore? Those are your 5 options. So let's go through the question one more time and being able to do this. A virtual machine has crashed overnight due to corrupted data and will not restart. The system administrator has recovered the entire system on a new virtual machine using a single process that recovered the entire VM to its previous state. Which of the following would best describe this recovery process? Would it be file level recovery, encrypted restore, image level recovery, server patch, or hypervisor restore? So those are your 5 options. If you think you know which option it is, go to professormesser.com/QA and answer right there. We'll see if you're right. See if you figured it out. Please know answering in the chat room. We'll be able to figure this out as we go. Pop open a new browser window. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Kind of cut myself off there. Yes, and in the chat room, no Googling. No Google. You can Google later. You're welcome to do that later. Take a guess now, then Google, and then don't change your answer. Submit it. Lock it in, then go Google. You can do that. No Alexa. Carlos is trying to get around the rules. I see what you're doing, and it's the spirit of the rules that you're breaking, Carlos. But that's a pretty good way to get around it. I think you're thinking. You're outside the box. I like that. Which of these would be the best way to describe this recovery process? Let's see what the answer is for this recovery process. I'm going to click over, and I haven't even looked yet, so I don't know. Did we all know this one? Did we not know this one? Are we mixed again? This is a good one to know. Let's see. How do we do? Well, we definitely have a majority this time, and it's really one of 2 that we answered. So one is an image level recovery. 56% of you chose option C, image level recovery. 33% of you chose hypervisor restore, a hypervisor restore. So those are your 2 options that people chose when they're dealing with this. This really is talking about virtual machines, but the concept here is really outside the scope of a virtual machine. So this is why you have to kind of think about how you would do this full size backup. This is what you would call an image level recovery. We're taking the entire image of this and we are recovering it. In the old days, we would take the standalone systems that would have an entire image available. We'd back up the entire image of a standalone computer, and then we would recover the entire image onto that standalone computer. But in a VM, you have these volume snapshots. A snapshot is what it's called, or hypervisor snapshot, which is effectively an image of the entire VM that is now taken. And if you ever need to go back to a date and time, you go back to that snapshot. So that's the very easy way to do that. As people are saying, those who are familiar with virtual machines in the chat room were saying snapshot. Well, snapshot's an image. That's what that is. But I didn't use that term snapshot, you'll notice on here. Snapshot is a generic term we sort of assign to VMs, but it is an image level recovery whenever we talk about that. A file level recovery is when you're taking individual files and copying them into an operating system. If you are recovering an entire system in one full entire section in a single process, as we said in this question, one single process, then you're probably recovering everything as an image. If this was multiple process, you'd have to install an operating system and then copy files back on, generally speaking. There are some operating systems that allow you to do that a little faster. I'm not looking at you, Windows. Windows does not allow you to do things very fast at all. And so this is one of those where an image level backup, and it probably did use a snapshot because our VM administrator is smart that way. Now, of course, you could have a separate backup program that is backing these things up separately as an image and recovering that way too. That's not an unusual way to do that. Certainly one of those you would have to work through. So this is one where this happens a lot, where you might have to do a recovery. Some people are saying, what's the likelihood that an actual image would be taken just prior to a crash? It might be done quite a bit. So sure. Now, I said here, this wasn't instant. I didn't say that the image was something that was taken prior to the crash, or at least not just prior to the crash. I said that the system administrator recovered the entire system on a new VM that recovered the entire VM to its previous state, whatever that state was. Was that state an hour before it crashed? Was it a day before it crashed? We don't know, but it was a previous state. So maybe this was done once a day. There are some places where it's constant, where there's a constant update between systems. If you're on one of the ProfessorMaster.com websites right now, you are on a virtual machine, and those virtual machines are constantly synchronized with each other. If one happens to go away, the other one has an exact duplicate of it seconds apart. If I make a change on one machine, seconds later, the other devices have that. So sometimes it's done more than once a day. I can build a new machine, just have everything copy over to that new machine, and now I've got a third one there. I've got a fourth one there. I've got a fifth one there. It's easy to duplicate from all of those to be able to have that here. The other option people did choose is hypervisor restore. There's no real such thing as a hypervisor restore. Sort of a term I made up. We don't use this term in the industry for anything. Are we restoring the hypervisor? That's not something you tend to do on a system. The hypervisor, of course, is the software that manages the operation of all these separate virtual machines. And so hypervisor restore, kind of an odd, vague term for something that doesn't really exist. Although if you extrapolate that to be that you're restoring the hypervisor, that would be a bad thing. That'd be really bad if you lost your hypervisor. I guess you could argue, no, hypervisor restore means you're going into the hypervisor to perform the restore function. I guess you could extrapolate that way as well, except nothing about the question said anything about going into the hypervisor to do any of that. And it may be that the re-imaging that took place here had nothing to do with a snapshot. It could have been a separate external image because this particular client has tried snapshots before. They're difficult to manage, and whenever you need them, they don't work properly. So instead, we're doing a separate imaging off to a separate server. This is not unusual to find these things. So that's why. Sorry, I try not to make up a lot of names. I find that it's weak sauce when it comes to making questions for you. But sometimes it helps test your knowledge of what you're reading. Now, by the way, this is a bit of a hard question too, as people in the chat room are mentioning, because this has nothing to do with the topics that were in the 22902. This is a 1002 topic. So if you are looking at this and saying, whoa, I am not at all familiar with this, that's probably expected at this point. There are not even any 22102, at least I think there's maybe one book out, maybe two books out right now for the 1001 and 1002 exams. So that is one where you do have to kind of think about what topics you have available. This will become a lot more familiar for you as my videos are produced, as books are available. This is all new content right now. So you should expect that there would be a little bit of a difficulty getting into some of these and working through them. But 57% of you chose image level recovery, and that is the right answer. That's what you're doing here, and that is the type of concept you need to think about when performing a backup and how things are restored. So that's a good way to do it. Now, if you are watching this for continuing education unit credit, The way that you can receive a digitally signed email from me saying that you must have watched this video is you follow these steps. You must follow these steps to have this happen. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. And at the top or bottom is a contact us link. It's really contacting me, sending me a note. And in there somewhere, put that this is the April 2019 221,002 A plus study group. You want to put your name and your email address because I will be emailing this back to you with your name on it. So if you put a fake name, you're going to get a certificate from me with your fake name on it, I guess. That happens more than you might think. Somewhere also on that, please make it very obvious. Try not to hide it in an entire paragraph of content. Somewhere in there, put image level recovery. I'm looking for those 3 words. Image level recovery. That's your super secret passphrase of the month. Put that in there so I see it, and then I can send you back an email that's digitally signed that says you must have watched this because you know that the super secret password was image level recovery, and you went through that entire process I just talked about where I went through the entire thing for you, and you followed all the right instructions and you did all the right things. You must have watched this. You couldn't have just gotten the term somewhere to be able to have that. As some people are asking in the chat room, why did they release exams if the resources aren't available yet? because it's a chicken and egg problem. We can't make the resources until we know that there are exam objectives. And it takes a long time to write a book. It takes a long time to produce videos. Each video series I create probably takes 3 months, and that's full time of somebody doing this. So that's why you're finding that the books are just coming out now when the exam objectives are released in January. We've been working on this for 3 months before that. So it's just one of those things that takes time. And right now there's overlap. So you've got a little bit of option there for doing all these things. If you don't have these objectives, I should probably update my screenshot here because I'm showing the 229.01 objectives here. But if you are taking the 221,001 exam, make sure, or 1002 exam, make sure you get the right exam objectives for this. The point with this is that everything we talked about today, everything you would be asked on the exam, it's in these exam objectives. There was a note I was reading on Reddit this morning where somebody had finished their exam. They found it very hard. And they said, you know how everybody says, make sure you download and use the exam objectives? There's a reason they're telling you that, because that's exactly what they're asking you on the exam. The way you get to these very quickly is go to professormesser.com/objectives. I'll redirect you over to the CompTIA website, or you can simply go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you download those. Make sure you read them. Make sure you use them as a checklist before going into your exam. If you're asking yourself, am I ready for this exam? Do I know everything I'm supposed to know? This document will tell you. You will know absolutely if you are ready for the exam because everything is in there. This is probably your best study materials right here. It's better than any book you can get. It's better than my videos. It's better than anything. Because after this, it doesn't matter what you study as long as it follows these exam objectives. In fact, you'll know if you've got good study materials because you'll be going through it and saying, wait a second, these study materials don't match the exam objectives that I have in front of me that come from CompTIA. So that's one thing you can think about. Can you believe we've gone through an hour of Q&A already? I do 2 A+ study groups every month now. That's 100% more than we used to do. That's twice as many. I have another pair of live A+ study groups for the 1001 and 1002 available on May 7th and May 9th. So come back for those. You can also go to the calendar that I have on my website at professormesser.com/calendar. You'll find next week is our Network Plus study group. The week after that is our Security Plus study group. We got plenty of those to go through. So make sure you have a look at the calendar if you're ever trying to figure out when is the next live event. When can we see Professor Messer? I know everybody's clamoring. When can we get a glimpse? And that's how you can do it. Go to the calendar. Don't forget about the daily pop quiz questions on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Don't forget about subscribing and clicking that bell on YouTube, especially since the 221,002 videos will be coming out shortly. That's a good one. And make sure you've got the notes at professormesser.link/1000 notes. That calendar is always there. Stick around for the next hour. I've got plenty to go through in the next hour. We're going to go through questions dealing with whatever you'd like. I'll open up the phone lines. You can ask questions in the chat room. You can call in all in the after show. But thank you for being here for the main Q&A and sticking around. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, that was a lot of content in a very short period of time. Absolutely. So let's do that. We've got some questions also on renewing our A+ certification without retaking the exam. I'll talk about that. Some people already mentioning that in the chat room. Casey, let me get the phone lines up and running very quickly, though. I will also be taking questions from the chat room. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Figure out these details. I think I've got one here. We can get this started. If you would bear with me a moment, I'm going to get my phone lines up and running so you're able to call in on the phone lines. I just have to make sure I call in as well. Not just you are calling in. I'm calling in because my phone lines are in the cloud. Of course they're in the cloud. That's where everything is, isn't it? So I'm going to get my phone lines up and running, and I'll use my Skype to call in to my phone in the cloud. There it is beeping. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. I'm going to click a few buttons on my screen if I can see what those buttons are. And then I hit a pound sign. I'll now enter this 6-digit PIN number, and it says, Welcome. I move my entire desk out of the way when I finish the streams. I don't. The desk stays exactly here. It doesn't move. What does move is the screens. They all come closer. So I move things around on the desk, but the desk stays in one place. In fact, now these days it doesn't move very much. In fact, the switching unit I use right here stays pretty much here. I shift it over a little bit. The mixer shifts back a little. The screen comes up here close to me because I'm blind. So it comes up for those pieces. But pretty much everything else stays exactly the way it is. You're welcome to call in on the phone lines. Our studio lines are set up at 855-785-7545. If you're calling in from the continental United States, you can use that number, which is a toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. Now, you can also go to Skype and do this for free on Skype. Hit the +1 at the beginning, and it doesn't cost you any Skype minutes to do this because it's a toll-free number. You can call any toll-free number on Skype for free, including this one. I pay for the call. Put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-7545, and that's the way that works. Do I have a new setup? Yes, I do. Practically everything that you're seeing is new. It's a new switcher. It's a new camera. Camera's a new camera that you're seeing this from. The streaming system is new. Everything is new. So it was 1080 before. For the last couple, 3-4 months, we switched over to 1080 from 720. Now we're still doing 1080, but I think it's a little clearer. There's still a little bit of color correction that needs to take place in the camera. I'm planning to do that today. I've got some meters set up, bought the color piece. I haven't done that to have this. Yeah, there's another monitor. There are the monitors on my screen. I got to do this later with the color correction. That nonsense. There is other monitors. They're not on my homepage. So yeah, things have changed. They've sort of gone through the years, have been modified and changed as we go. So there's always something that's a little different. Let's talk about renewing your certification real quick, since that came up in the chat room. So someone here has, Casey has an A+ certification. It has not expired yet. This is good. But how do you renew it without taking the exam? And that's something you should absolutely consider. Could you imagine taking both A+ exams again just to renew? Don't do that. You don't have to do that. It's very nice that you don't do that. It all works very well that way. But there are things you can do. You can collect continuing education unit credits. CompTIA does have a renewal exam that you could take. So there's a single consolidated exam that you could take for renewal. They allow you to take higher level exams. So you could take the Network Plus, or you could take the Security Plus, or a higher level exam. That will renew your A+. They allow you to take exams from third parties. So you could take a Cisco exam or a Microsoft exam that could in either partially or completely renew your A+ certification, because it applies CEUs towards that. There is a new way of doing this, and I have a video on YouTube that is how to renew your CompTIA certification in just a few hours. So that's dramatically different than what it used to be. It used to be days of your time. Now you can renew in just a few hours if your current certification matches a few different sets of criteria. And so there's a new product that CompTIA has called the CompTIA CertMaster CE. That CertMaster name, they have a number of different CertMaster programs. They have CertMaster Learning. They have CertMaster, they have another CertMaster. They have a CertMaster CE. There's different CertMasters. So the CertMaster CE is the one that allows you to renew your certification in just a few hours. Just search for that on the YouTube, Professor Messer, certified just a few hours, and you'll find that. And it links you back to that page on CompTIA where you can learn about the CertMaster CE. That's the special term you're looking for. And that allows you to renew really, literally, in just a few hours. Someone came to my website in the chat recently and said, my certification expires tomorrow. What am I going to do? And we said, what about CertMaster CE? And they ran off and got that. And they reported back the next day and said, I'm renewed. It took 3 hours because I knew the content really well. CompTIA estimates it will take you 4 to 6. He finished in 3. And he says, that's it. I'm renewed. Got it. That was easy. And I think they do want to make it easy for you. If you know the content, why not renew your certification? I think that's the perspective CompTIA is taking with this. With some people, collecting CEs is more comfortable for them. So it just depends on what you want to do and how it works. There's cost, benefit associated with all of these options. Find the one that works for you. Let's go to the calls. I think we'll go to the 972 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? I hear myself. You may want to turn off that stream, listen in to the phone line, and we can figure out who you are, what's your name, where are you calling from. Hello, caller.
How you doing, sir?
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate your work. Thank you so much, for all you do. So my question is, I like to do the new A+, the 1001 and 1002, and there's not enough resources right now.
Right.
For that new A+.
Right.
So my question is, can I use the course objectives from CompTIA's website and your course notes, your study notes? Would that be sufficient enough to write the exam, as soon as possible?
It's certainly a good start. I never recommend for anyone to use a single set of resources for anything, especially as important as a certification exam. So one of the things that I will often tell people is get as many different resources as you can. But as you've seen, there's not a lot to choose from right now. I'm telling you to get a lot of resources, and yet there aren't any. So what option do you have? Well, fortunately, you're going to have a lot of options this month. Now, CompTIA, from the day the exam was released, CompTIA has their own book. So if you wanted to pay for CompTIA's book, they have one that they have written. And up to this point, that has really been the only book that is available. So that's been a bit of a challenge. I believe starting this week, we've started to see electronic versions of books become released. And looking at Amazon's book release schedule, there is expected to be a book by Mike Myers available on April the 10th. There is one becoming available by Quentin Doctor and John Buhagiar on April 23rd. And then there is another one available from Troy McMillan on April 23rd. So already, and down April 30th is another one from Cybex from Jeff Parker and Quentin Doctor, which is some practice tests. So this month, you're getting at least 2 or 3 different book options available. So all of this concern that we've all had really since January, which is where's the books, where's the books, where's the books, that all goes away now this month, thankfully. Now, my course notes for the 1001 and 1002, they've been available since December, since before the exam was technically available. And those are full and complete. They have everything in there. So if you're getting my course notes, you at least will have all of the exam objective content, and everything that will be in my future videos is already in those books. Does that make sense?
Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. You have another question?
No.
I appreciate you calling. Thank you, and best of luck with that 1000 series. Let us know how it goes. The idea, though, and the thing we've all been struggling with, really, I would agree, since the release date has been the availability of this content. I'm as frustrated as the rest of the chat room. And people saying, what? Like, I thought that was a valid question. Why in the world did they release this exam and not have anything available? And that's the way it's always been. Not that that helps at all with what you're doing, but there is this overlap period right now. And the expectation is that a huge number of people are still studying for their 900 series. Content for that one has been available for the last 3 years. So there's still plenty of content. Secondly, though, and probably more importantly, I mentioned at the beginning of the study group, is it's 20% of the content is new on the 1001 and 1002, which means 80% of that exam are things that were covered on the 900 series. So a lot of this content will overlap a bit to be able to do this. So think about that and how it operates and how they go, and you'll be fine. And in reality, having the 1000 series content is all of these books are going to be available well before the 900 series even retires. So by the time they're available in April, you've got May, June, July, 3 more months before the 900 series goes along. And at this time next month on the study group, there'll be so many books available, we aren't even going to have this conversation anymore. You're like, well, we'll just get the book that's on Amazon. In fact, we'll get to choose from many books available to us on Amazon. There's not going to be these questions about where are the books. Suddenly, those problems just disappear for all of this. And of course, by the way, my 1001 series course already available online, both the course notes and every video. And my 1002 videos, we're already shooting them. We already have some that are ready to be edited. We're already working on those and churning through. There's plenty to go through with those, and I'll have plenty of those videos coming out very, very quickly. It's going to be another one of those things where we're going to go from where are all the videos to, wow, look at all these videos sitting here. So hopefully that will help you as well as you're going through all of these. Back to the phone lines, 559. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm John. I'm from the United States.
Hello, John from the United States of America. What can we do for you, sir?
I had a few security-related questions, at least one for sure.
All right.
Is there any security difference between USB 2.0 and 3.0?
A security difference between USB 2.0 and 3.0. In what context of security would you be referring? Because there are some people think of security as sort of a broad term. Other people may be looking at it from a programming perspective, for example.
Okay, so my company, which I'm not going to disclose the name, uses for credit card payments a keypad that's supposed to encrypt the data on there. And I was told by my supervisor to use the blue USB 3.0 port instead of the 2.0 that is black. I didn't know if there was a difference in between in terms of security.
There's not a difference in the technology of the interface itself that somehow would make the transfer of that data more secure. There's no VPN or encryption technology built into USB 2.0 or 3.0 for that matter. There's nothing there that could make it more secure, but the software within the keypad could be expecting it on a particular interface, and when it finds it on that interface, automatically decides to encrypt because of the interface it's coming in on. I could see that happening.
Okay. All right. And let's see. So do you think, have you ever gotten a chance to play around with Windows Sandbox and an insider build yet?
No,
Windows 10?
And I generally don't do any of the the early builds, the sandbox builds, or anything that's above or beyond what's currently publicly shipping, because generally those things tend to change over time. But I haven't. Is there something you may have seen in one of those that you have a question about?
Oh, yes. I didn't know if Windows Sandbox is basically like a simplified version of like a virtual machine where you don't have to pre-configure everything. It's all just there, like opening an app or a game.
They've really built it to be, and this is sort of the generic term that we use for sandbox and security, and applies here to this Windows version as well. It's a platform. It's a Windows operating system, but it's designed to run as a standalone, isolated system. It is completely a standalone Windows in how it operates. It's very common to use the sandboxes in the security world when you're doing testing of viruses and malware. You put it in a sandbox, you let the malware run, and then you watch to see what happens. But because it's in the sandbox, and the sides of the sandbox are very tall, it can't get out of the sandbox. It can play around in the sand as much as it wants inside of Windows, but there's no way out of the sandbox. So it is a security tool, and it's something that does come in handy. Generally runs, I think in Microsoft's sandbox that they build, it runs as a VM. But it's designed to be running in Windows 10. They've kind of extrapolated something we've been running in Windows for a long time from third parties, where they will effectively run the operating system in a sandbox. You give that to your parents, to your grandparents. It runs in the sandbox, and then when they get infected, you simply reset the sandbox and everything goes back to normal. So it's a pretty good idea from a security perspective. It'll be interesting to see how the Microsoft implements it.
Okay, and what is the best way so that I can play more graphics intensive programs such as games and within a virtual machine utilizing the graphics hardware available to me instead of having it run on the host system?
Yeah.
Is there any sort of configuration?
That's a tough one, because when you get into a virtual machine environment, you're using a portion of what's available on the hardware side in the native operating system of that computer. And more often, there's a shim, there is a driver like the hypervisor that's between the virtual machine and the actual hardware of the hosted computer. So that's where you do run into challenges, because you're not ever going to get the same visual performance from a graphics card and a VM that you would get on the native hardware itself. You're sticking someone right in the middle of it. So unfortunately, there's no good way to do that or to get these programs running. I guess in the future, as our graphics capabilities improve, we'll be able to run some of the higher graphics programs more reliably, faster, with a deeper set of colors, as our internal hardware gets better, as our operating systems get faster, as our processors get faster. But that certainly is one of the limiting factors you have today in virtual machines.
Okay. All right. It looks like that's all I have. I don't think I can think of anything else. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you calling. That's if you've ever done that, by the way, where you've taken your game, you've stuck it in a VM. I've done this. And it's a game that is relatively high graphic requirements, and you're running a VM, you're just going to be disappointed. You're just not going to be happy with it. Will it do the basic graphics? Yes, you probably could get away with some basic graphic functionality, even basic Photoshop type functionality in a VM. I could see some of that working, but games have such a heavy requirement on the hardware of a graphics card that it becomes a little more challenging to be able to run anything reliably and in any decent type of performance in a VM. You just never want to be in that situation where you're having to wait for the game. It's slow, and you've got poor frame rates. It's just not good. Just not good. Yeah, you have to really take and bump everything up. Hopefully your hypervisor you're using can do some level of acceleration. Not all can. Hopefully you can increase the amount of video memory available if you can, if some other VM isn't already using it or your host machine is not already using it. A bit of a challenge to be able to do that. So that's the issue is with VMs is it's always a moving target, and they're getting better as time goes on. We didn't used to have any hardware acceleration in a VM. Now we're seeing some that's very driver specific. You know, if it's NVIDIA, it can do some. If it's a different chipset, well, maybe not. So that type of thing. You've got other things to pull from. And the chat room folks are talking about differences between the 220.901 and the 220.902, or the 220.901 and the 1001, and then the 220.1002 versus the 902. There are some big differences between this. Let's pull up my exam objectives. Maybe I can give you some perspective of this. Let's have a look at all of these. I'm going to put this into a 2-page view so we can do some of this. Oh, well, this is not a good one to use. I was going to show you my list of things that have changed, but I don't have that list immediately available. Do I have a older list I can show you? I'm trying to find you the right list for all of these. Oh, here it is. I've got it. So let's have a look at my list. This is what I use before I start going through the exam objectives. Let's pull it up and see if I can show it to you. Here we go. So here are my exam objectives. Get rid of this on the screen so you can see everything. So this is what you would download from CompTIA for the exam objectives. So here are the list of objectives. I'm not going through details here. I'm just kind of giving you an overall perspective of colors. Anything that is green is effectively the same exam objectives as the 902, because we're looking at the 1002 exam objectives in front of us. So you can see there's a lot of green. And as I mentioned earlier, about 20% of the exam is new. So you can see just looking at this, that's about right. Anything that is yellow are things that are new, that I had to create new content for. So you will see quite a bit of that. Let's flip to the next page in this list. So the next page, similar thing. There's a lot of green, although there are some sections of this, like section 1.7, summarize application installation and configuration concepts, all brand new to the 1002 exam. So I had to do all brand new video there. And then the next one, 1.8, configure Microsoft Windows networking on a client, all the same as the old version. So very, very similar to this, and have those things there. Security, you can see it's sort of a mixture. There's some interlaced within the old stuff. There's some more security that's here. There's some that's entire sections that are exactly the same. So, and people have even said, and I'm not even done with all of this, I think that's all the same. This is different. That's practically the same. And you can see not much there. So it's section 3, not much has changed at all. Section 4 is all new content, bunches of new content, and then some of it is all the same as well. And then the last 2 sections, scripting and remote access, was all new. So there you go. That's a lot, but it does give you a perspective of what those differences are between all of those. So hopefully that will give you some ideas of the differences. It's enough to make a difference on your exam. And that's the important thing that I tell people is there's 20% of it's different. So when you start reading through it, it seems very similar. In fact, people have sent me messages that say, well, did you just copy the same videos again? Is that what you did? I did shoot new videos. They're all new videos. But you'll find a lot of the context, a lot of the concepts, a lot of the topics are exactly the same because they're exactly the same. As I mentioned earlier, HDMI didn't change from 3 years ago. USB 2.0 is still USB 2.0 from 3 years ago. But I did add additional USB content. I added things that they added to the course and took out things they took out. So there are differences, trust me, but 20% difference is a pretty big difference. When you're studying, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you sit down for the exam, if you did not study the 1002 exam objectives and you studied from 902 content, you're missing 20% of the exam. And when you're asked questions on the exam, 20% could cost you the certification. You could fail because of that 20%. So that's why I tell people, make sure that your exam objectives and that your study materials match the version of the exam that you're taking. Do not study for the 902 and walk into the 1002 exam. Do not study for the 1002 and walk into the 902 exam. You will not score as good as you could. And why would you do that? You need to really prepare and walk in with the best possible outcome that you could get. And that's the way you do it, is make sure everything matches up. This last caller was asking, and I think that's a good strategy right now, was asking, can I just go through the exam objectives, take anything that's different, study from the old videos, but anytime there's a difference, go hunt down that content somewhere else. Find that 20% in another resource. Absolutely. That's a pretty good strategy. And just remember that there will be A+ books available in a week. I mean, that's literally in a week you're going to see books available if there aren't available now. I heard a rumor or saw something, or there was a mention of something I was reading this morning that one of those books was available in a electronic form today. So we're already starting to see these things roll out. We're just desperate for content. We would love to have more content. And I get it. I want to give you more content. I will be. It's great that we got through the 1001 course. So that one's behind us. I am churning through 1002 videos. You should see what we're planning just this weekend with churning through these videos. So I'm going to be putting out as much as I can, as fast as I can. I want to get through them just as badly as you do, to be quite honest. We've been working on these courses literally for months, and it would be nice to be through with that project and make some more content that you are asking me about. I want to get more stuff to you. I can't get more stuff to you until I finish this one. So it's that trade-off whenever we go through this. Let's go to the 214 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is T. Davis. I'm calling from Dallas, Texas.
Welcome,
and I'm,
Dallas.
Of course, watching you here now.
Thank you for
yes.
watching.
Now, by way of Houston. I'm from Houston, so let's get it correct.
That works too.
Say it again?
That works too. What can we do for you?
Oh, okay. So what I have, I'm planning to go far as certifications go. I have a list here that I want to get, and they're all CompTIA, CYSA plus,
yep,
CASP plus, Pen Test plus, Server plus, Cloud plus,
wow,
Linux plus, and Project plus.
Okay.
So what I'm curious about is, I know you have video series for A+ network and security.
Sure.
But of course, I'm trying to see what would you but would recommend for someone like me to go further with those certifications.
Well, I can sort of answer the question, but I'm going to answer the question with a question, and then we'll drill down on the other specifics of this. So you listed off, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 different certifications. They're all completely well-respected industry certifications that are available. Many of them from CompTIA. So you're on the right track with finding the right type of content. But I sort of want to take a step backwards and say, what is the end goal for taking these certifications or earning these certifications? Is there something you're working towards? Is there a particular requirement from an employer, or what is it that you would like to accomplish?
Well, I want to go into server administration, and
Okay.
I know all those are not necessary per se. However, I want to server administration is not my end game, but it's my current goal.
Sure.
But once I reach server administration, what I want to do is have that arsenal to be able to venture off, because, with pen test and CASP, those are things that or Cloud Plus even. I can venture off into several different things depending on what's going on with, because the different things that are going on with AI and robotics and things of that nature, you never know where technology is going to be in 3 to 4 years.
That's so true.
So I just want to have a complete tool belt, if you will.
I think that's a good strategy to have. The one thing you have to be very careful about is how employers will interpret the number of certifications you have and how they apply to the current job. The challenge, and this is a real thing, as odd as it sounds, but being overqualified for a position is an absolutely real concern. And if you're trying to get a job as a system administrator, that's one of the first jobs I got in IT after being someone who was I was sort of a field technician / cable and printer deliverer, and then moved into a help desk at a insurance company and became kind of the workstation person to fix things on a workstation, and then moved into server administration. So I get the need to want to move up and find the things. So your strategy is spot on with what you're trying to do. And I think that everybody in IT should be thinking the same way that you're thinking, which is you need to have a broadened tool set available to you so that you can do the next thing that comes along, whatever that happens to be. And so I applaud that part of it, but you have to be very careful about what you present to an employer. If you're looking to get a job as a system administrator, the employer probably has a job posting that says, we need a system administrator to have these skills, and they'll list those all out. And I guarantee you, they probably don't have pen testing on that list. They probably don't have firewall management on that list. They probably don't have a number of other things that you listed that were part of the certifications that you would mention. So if you were to present to that employer, oh, I think I'm qualified for this particular position. Not only do I have the server certifications and knowledge of A+ and Network+, but I also have, and you list off 7 or 8 other things, they're going to think in the back of their minds, man, if we hire this person for this job, they're going to be so bored that they're going to be gone in 3 months, and we're going to have to start this process all over again. It's a real problem. So I often tell people, go get the certifications. I'm not telling you not to get the certs. If you think those certs are going to help you and you feel like you're learning something by earning those certifications, because I always do when I'm getting a cert, then go get them. But you don't have to tell every employer that you have all of them. If you were applying to a Linux position...
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. If you're applying to a Linux position, have a resume at the top that shows your Linux Plus, your A+, your Network Plus, and your Security Plus. If you're applying to a position that's looking for entry-level pen testing, maybe that's where you put your CASP, you put your Pen Test Plus, you put your Linux Plus, and you put those at the top. And you sort of create a customized resume depending on where you're going in and who you're presenting this to. Another thing I'll mention to you is to focus on what the employer is looking for. So if this is something where I'd like to get a system administrator position and you're sort of hitting it with a shotgun blast, hoping you're going to hit something, you may want to do a little more research in your particular area. And Dallas-Fort Worth has a ton. You're in a great location. Geographically speaking, you are in the heart of technology in that section of the United States. There are so many options available for you. So you should very easily be able to gather some job postings from the local companies that are in Plano, in Fort Worth, in Dallas proper, and find out what are they looking for when they want to hire a system administrator. And you should be able to create a spreadsheet or at least find a top 5 or 6 things they're looking for. That's where you should focus your efforts, is on those top 5 or 6 things, so that when you walk in the door, you're already covering what they're looking for. And then you can go a little bit outside the scope of that by telling them the things that you've done in your home lab, by telling them maybe one extra certification that you have outside the scope of what they had listed, but still applies towards system administration. Maybe you got a Microsoft cert that they didn't have listed. You go, oh yeah, I'm very familiar with doing the automated installations on Windows 10, and I got a certification because of that. Those are the types of things that can really, really help you.
That's right. And you know what I was thinking? I was already thinking about tailoring my resume because you never put all your cards on the table. That's
Never.
even in life. You know that.
Never.
But the thing I was, yes, sir. But the thing I was mainly focused on, like I said, casting a wide net. I know by doing server administration, all of those things are not necessary. But I look at this field like the medical field. We are basically the surgeons of computers, just like you have surgeons of people, as far as in the medical field. So I look at each one of these certifications as a specialty, just like you have a neurologist or a psychologist or a cardiologist. So I look at these certifications as being able to step in the operating room and be able to operate from head to toe. Of course, most people go into one specialty, but I just look at this as being able to get as much as you can and just run with it.
Well, I'll take it to the next level with you, and I'll give you a perspective from mine, whether for whatever value that's worth. When I started in this industry, there was no internet. So we had no perspective of being able to connect to an internet, have internet-facing apps, have the cloud. None of those things existed in the world. And what I started to do is focus in on particular technologies that interested me. And then I just kind of followed the path that it took me on. I started with workstation administration. I moved into server administration. That got me more into infrastructure and networking. That moved me into security. And so throughout the years, I moved forward. I would have never been able to say at the beginning of this, well, my end game is to be able to have a studio at home where I can make training videos and I can stream live to everybody in the world at any time I wanted for free. Those things, they didn't even exist. How could I even thought that something like that was going to happen? So what we know now, and you already mentioned, in the next 3 to 5 years, everything's going to change dramatically anyway. But I would also tell you that you're going to be forced down the road of whatever that happens to be, either because you're interested in it or an opportunity arises. So spreading yourself out very broad, you may find it doesn't help you as much as simply moving the boat as the river is taking you down the way, because the boat's going to go whatever path that river is going. And if you follow it, and you'll find that it leads you down, turns out it leads you down the right path. And to take your analogy one step further, I guarantee you, and I can tell you based on who I know in my neighborhoods around me, is the guy who specializes as a podiatrist. He knows the big toe better than anybody else knows the big toe in town, makes a lot more money than the guy who's the general practitioner. And the same thing applies in IT. If you can focus on a particular set of technologies and become just the expert in those technologies, and even then you're not going to know everything about that technology, by the way, but you become more knowledgeable in that technology than anybody else around you, you will suddenly find that your financial and personal value suddenly goes up. And so don't discount the idea of focusing in laser focused on a particular area, because you'll find in many, many, many cases that is the thing that not only is most satisfactory to you, that makes you happiest, but it's also financially one of the best things you can do.
Okay, that definitely sounds like good advice. And I was listening to you as far as, like you said, you took a natural transgression or progression, as far as networking.
You have to ask the people I worked with. Might have been a transgression in their eyes.
But like you said, it took a natural progression from networking to infrastructure to security.
Yeah.
And just that natural progression is actually the order of the exam objectives. If you, because just for networking alone, 1.0 is networking concepts. Then you have infrastructure, which is 2.0, and you got 4.0, which is security. So just like your natural progression in life and in your career, they present it here in the exam objectives. So it's crazy. Life is, it all comes down to one thing in the end.
It's very remarkable, and you'll be able to look back in 10 or 20 or more years, in my case, and think, how did we get here? I'm not sure how that happened, but it does take a path, and it does lead you down the road, and you'll be surprised the turns it takes.
You're right about that. And look, if you knew me, then that is the analogy for my life in a nutshell. How did we get here?
I think if you can do that, you're doing just fine.
See, yeah, I am grateful. And let me just say this. I know I'm not going to be long-winded because I'm not the only caller. You are awesome. Like you said, there was not a you or an internet per se back then, but you took the natural progression, and we appreciate you progressing to the step to where you're feeding the masses, because you are teaching men and women to fish, and that is important. That is your contribution to Earth, and we do appreciate that.
I appreciate it. My goal, and I've said it over and over again, I want people to get a job or get a better job, and I think that you just keep doing that throughout your career, and everything tends to work out. I appreciate the call.
I do too. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Professor Messer. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
You too.
It's one of those things where whenever I started putting together the business that is this, because it is a company, and I still have to, their lights still have to be on, and the kids still want food, and they want clothing, they want shelter, all that type of thing. But I wanted to do something that it was kind of a win-win-win situation. So this is our win-win-win, where I know the kids are so spoiled with their food and their clothing and their shelter. This is the win-win for me. I wanted to, is it possible to have a business that was self-supporting, that gave me the autonomy to be at home, because I traveled all of my career. I'm a million miler on one airline and another million miles in the others combined. Can I stay at home, be with my family, and yet provide some type of value to everybody who would need this information? So far it's working. This crazy experiment has escaped the lab. It's now out into the world. Now what happens? And so far it's okay. Now things are all right. We're doing it okay. So we're going to keep doing that and seeing how that works out. So I appreciate the feedback. It's knowing that it has some value that motivates me to do more of this. So I try not to take it from an egotistical perspective, but more a constructive one, because everything could change in an instant in life. So if I can at least get these things done now and get them out, and keep doing whatever this is we're doing, and it seems to be something positive, we're going to keep doing that. I appreciate that. And we're going to keep doing that. I think the model has worked. We're going to keep making videos. I keep wanting to put them out for free and not have any behind the scenes. There's no extra videos somewhere. There's nothing extra you would have to pay for. There's no paywalls. There's no registration. They're just there. And we sort of put them out to the universe, and let's see what happens. And so far it's been okay. I'm surprised it's gone as well as it has in some cases. So we'll figure out if it continues to be this way. So far it has been. There's some exciting things happening this year. There are things I can't talk about yet, but things that are coming down the line that I'm very excited that we're able to do. And we wouldn't be able to do it without you telling other people in the world that this is good. So the likes that you make on videos, the subscriptions you make to the channels, those types of things you always hear about. You're watching the video and they say, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit the thumbs up. There's a reason we say that, because that is the feedback to the rest of the industry that the things we are doing have value. And when they see that, they say, oh, well, if other people like this, let's see if we can get in on this and make it even better. And we've been able to talk with people like YouTube. We have been on YouTube since YouTube has had, well, even before high definition. So we've been putting videos out there for a very long time. And so now on YouTube, I have someone I can email and talk to and have meetings with. We wouldn't be able to do that without your help. And it's incredibly valuable for what we're doing. Somebody in the chat room said the 7-second subnetting helped you. I'm glad it helped you. I was commenting to someone on another study group that people will sometimes comment about that video system. For those not familiar, my 7-second subnetting video is how I subnet during a certification exam. It's not how I subnet in the rest of my world. But during a certification exam, it's very high stress. I can't think straight. I get very uptight during an exam. The adrenaline's flowing. The anxiety levels very high for me during an exam. So I I'm not very good at calculating things. And those of you that are familiar with subnetting, you can do it in your head, use the magic number method, use the pi method, whatever method you use, you got it down. But on an exam, I just go blank. And I always second guess myself. Did I calculate that right? And if you didn't calculate it right, the entire question falls apart, especially with Cisco exams. So it was a method I put together. So just to see, can I create a way to do subnetting that requires no math and can't be wrong? And it's relatively simple math. It's not like calculus is involved if you're doing subnetting, but it's still enough to throw me. Powers of 2 throw me through the wall. So it was a way I created to be able to do any type of subnetting during an exam and know I got it right without having to do any math. And that helped me a lot. I'm glad it helped you too, because that was a killer for me to be able to do that. In chat room, people are asking also, have I considered doing other certification walkthroughs? Will I solely stick with CompTIA? I don't think so. In the past, some of you are probably aware, I've had Microsoft certification videos. My 7680 Windows 7 certification course was out there. Microsoft, of course, Windows 7's been around 10 years. So that certification has been retired by Microsoft. And we have thought about doing other certifications. Right now, for example, I have a set of course notes for the Cisco ICND1 exam. I'd love to do another set of course notes for the ICND2. I'd love to do more Microsoft. I'd love to do more Red Hat, more VMware. I have a big list. There's an enormous list I would like to do. I have no particular group or company that I'm sticking with or associated with. I have no personal association with the CompTIA, no professional association with CompTIA. I personally know people at CompTIA, of course. I've talked with them and had conversations and gone to some of their conferences before. But I don't have a professional relationship with CompTIA. I'm not a CompTIA partner, and that's by design. I don't want to have a particular requirement that I do things for anybody. It's part of the business model that we have created. If I want to choose what I want to do it on my terms and decide how I do it at that point. It's just that CompTIA happened to be the one that was the most popular of all the things we did. And so I'm making sure I maintain my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus and keep those up and running. So after I finish the 220-1002, though, the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus aren't going to be changing for at least 2 years. So now what do I do? That's the question. And that answer, by the way, changes every day, it seems. Me and Mrs. Professor Messer sit down and go, what are we doing when we're done with the 1000 series videos? What's next? So it's always a question about what's next. The list changes all the time. It's a moving target. And then I see something interesting. What about these over here? And I do more research over there. Then somebody sends me an email and says, what about this thing? Oh, pretty. That's shiny. Let me go look at that. Shiny, shiny. That's pretty. And somebody says, what about this thing? So I'm constantly gathering intel and looking at the shiny, pretty things and trying to figure out. So that's where I'm coming from in my head, is that I never exactly know what I'm going to be doing until I actually start the project. So it probably isn't going to be CompTIA. It might be. I guess it could be. I looked at the CompTIA Linux Plus the other day and thought that would be a good one to do. But not doing it just because it's CompTIA. I'm doing it because I look at the certification. It's a good certification. People can use the content that's on that certification. And can people take advantage of that certification in getting a job or getting a better job? That's how I approach this. What that turns out to be, sometimes I make good decisions on that line. Sometimes I don't make such good decisions on that along there. Do I have any tips for someone who wants to go into IT security? I do. I'm speaking as someone who is a former senior systems engineer for Next Generation Firewall Company. I have met with hundreds of different IT security groups in primarily the Eastern United States, but in some cases around the world. And I will tell you, if you want to get into IT security, you should have the strongest possible foundation you can have in networking. Now, it may sound, wait a second, everything I read says I need to know how to do pen testing, except none of the people I just talked about focus on pen testing at all. Pen testing is an interesting line of work. It's a niche line of work for security. It's a very fun line of work for security. It pays very well. It's a very interesting part of security. But the vast majority of IT security has nothing to do with pen testing. I know the industry has told you something different. Everybody online says pen testing, red team, blue team, red, blue, red. And now all of that's really interesting, and I love it. I think it's fun. It's sexy. That's security. That's really interesting stuff. You're finding ways to break into, yeah, that's great. But it's a small, tiny little piece of what IT security is. Most people doing IT security are technically in charge of keeping data safe for their organization. That is maintaining their firewalls, configuring their multi-factor authentication, configuring client-side VPN, configuring VPN tunnels to third parties, setting up how the syslog data will be sent into the SIM, configuring the reports on the SIM and how that information will be provided to them, being able to check and make sure that the security parameters of the data center and of all of their servers and services are constantly kept up to date. None of those things, by the way, had anything to do with pen testing. Nothing to do with pen testing. They might do some testing themselves. They'll run an Nmap scan every night to make sure nothing got accidentally turned on. They'll run some pen tests themselves occasionally internally to make sure that they're covering all the bases with a particular server. So there is some pen testing in there. But for the most part, IT professionals are focused on the network. Everything I just mentioned, by the way, had such a large network part. There's configuring client-side VPN, site-to-site VPN, setting up your firewall with layer 3, being able to route through that firewall or integrate with existing routers, integrate with the switches that are on the inside, redundant switches that are on the inside, with redundant firewalls. All of that has such a very strong foundation in networking that you have to be very, very, very comfortable in the network part, in the switching and the routing part, to be able to layer the security on top of it. So if somebody says, I want to go into IT security, I always say, learn everything you can about networking. And then focus on certain aspects of networking so you can really become very, very familiar. Really become familiar with BGP. Be the BGP expert in your particular neck of the woods. Really understand the nuances of BGP and how that can work in a firewall. Or really become the expert in IPsec. Really understand the details of phase 1 and phase 2. What's really happening? How do you troubleshoot that? How do I visualize what's really happening between the two? What do those protocols look like? And you want to be able, if anybody presented IPsec problems to you, you'd be able instantly to start breaking it apart, going, oh, your problem's right here in phase 2. You'd missed there's these two things have to be set up. Become that person. Because then once you build the phase 1 and phase 2, now you have to route traffic over it. Well, what do your routing tables look like? How do you decipher those routing tables? Where's this routing information coming from? Are you static routing or dynamic routing? Are you dynamic routing internally from EIGRP outward to BGP? Are we doing a route redistribution? That's all networking. All those things I just told you were networking, and yet you have to know that to be able to do IT security. So that's where I'm coming from with those ideas and why I say if you want to go into IT security, learn as much as you can about networking. Boy, I really went into detail with that, didn't I? Sorry for the talking. I do that occasionally. It's something I'm very passionate about because I did it for so long. I met with so many people. And I really feel like the industry has done a bit of a disservice to IT security and making people understand what they need to know. So I'm out here with a big flag waving it saying, do more networking, which isn't sexy. It's not dynamic. There's not this interesting breaking into a network concept. And yet it is the one thing that can propel you into security. I mean, propel you. So that's one of those. I'm going to go back and answer a question about my switcher in a moment. Somebody else in here, Coach Brian was asking, have I thought about opening a P.O. box? As sort of to send me things, to send me tchotchkes or donation. I don't take donations, and I really don't take gifts or anything like that. This wasn't the concept. This wasn't the business model. Putting these videos on YouTube allows you to watch them for free, but it also helps keep all of this running with advertising. I've got my course notes. You buying the course notes keeps all of this running. So I don't have, we've considered in the past doing things like a Patreon, for example, a monthly stipend. People wanted to pay for this, they could do it. We've considered taking the videos and making a different group of videos and putting them behind a paywall. And if you want these super secret videos, you can pay extra for them. Or, all these other ideas. Every business model there is about this, I've thought about it. Trust me, constantly. And I keep returning to it and rethinking about it and going through the motions of that. It's working great right now. So don't worry about us. We're doing okay. This model, you're making it work. I'm not making it work. You're making it work. So I tell people all the time, if they want to create content, there is a market for content on the internet. You can be very successful doing that. You just have to find the right type of content in the right way and present it in a way that makes sense. So there's no plans you can click the contact us and my mailing address is there. And people have sent me physical thank you notes before, which is so inspiring and so motivating to us to receive. That's the most I would ever hope to get on this. And every time people send me thank you emails, I keep that stuff. Like, okay, that's my get hype right there, is to read through those emails. So that's good. I'm glad that's helping people. But to be quite honest, I'm just making some videos. You're the guys actually doing the work. You're the ones having to watch them. You're the ones having to learn the content. You have to go into the room where the exam is. You have to get through the exam, sometimes multiple times to get through these exams. Those are the ones that are actually doing the hard work. I'm a guy in a room making videos. So it's a good partnership, I think. It's a good combo. We're working together. I should be sending you the thank you note. And I try to do that every time we're on here, just so you're aware. Other people, what about donations page to assist lower income to get a product to improve their situation? I've thought about that as well. There's been some concept in my mind of how can we make the certifications more accessible. CompTIA does a pretty good job of this now. They work with a lot of third parties that teach IT to people who may not necessarily have had those resources available to them normally. You just never hear about it, but I do. And they make the certifications accessible to them at a price point that they're able to work that through. A lot of people don't realize those things. There's organizations that do this that we give content to. There's other third-party organizations we contribute content to because it's people that are in prison, that are people that are veterans, people that are in the inner city and want to learn content. I'm giving our content away, and CompTIA does that too. So we're able to do that for you. You doing this allows us to do that for them. So just keep doing what you're doing. I don't promote it. I don't think that's something I want to promote of who we're doing this for and what they're doing. It's not a marketing thing for us. I'm not trying to get a tax break because we're doing it. I just want to give people those things so that they can earn it. I don't even like talking about it. It makes me uncomfortable. It's just the way we are. That's just how it is. So that's one of the things I think that work through all of this. You're actually helping quite a bit, and you may not even know it. So thank you for that. And somebody else asked about my switching system. Some of you have noticed that the video is a little better. It's not quite there yet. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but the camera image is better than it has been in the past. I was using a consumer grade Canon camcorder with an HDMI out previously. Now I have a Panasonic Lumix GH5S. So this is a digital SLR that you can almost see it up there. That's designed for video. And I got some nice glass on it. It's pretty nice the way we got this set up. So this is a much better image I was able to present. There's still a little bit of color work that I need to do inside the camera. And so I'll be working through that piece. There will be much better color on the videos that we're posting because I can do a lot more color correction with that now. I've got a lot more capabilities for that. The camera that we've got back here, that's what I call my bird cam. The bird cam's a new camera. All this is 4K now. The entire studio now running at 4K. So that's something that really just happened this month to get everything running at 4K. This switcher in front of me, people were asking about the switcher. That is a brand new switcher. The TriCaster system is indeed, it's still in here. I haven't completely disassembled it and taken it out yet. But this is a brand new switcher. This is the Blackmagic Television Pro 4K. And it is all self-contained. This is it. This is the switcher, hardware, and switching desktop piece all in one unit. And it's 4K. And it has amazing functionality for both video and audio. I can't even believe what the industry has done at this point for an incredibly, relatively small price point. This is, I think, a $3,000 product. I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. Where we have gone in the past 10 years is remarkable. But that's why this looks different. The switcher is much higher quality. This is a 4K signal that I am shrinking down to HD and sending out to Google right now, to YouTube. So that's why hopefully you're seeing a little better quality with this. The videos will now be produced at 4K and will be uploaded at 4K. So everything from this point forward with my 1002 course will be a 4K course. So you'll see that available on YouTube. So hopefully that will help people who are watching at home. A lot of people have 4K in their house now. They're streaming YouTube from their big television at home. This gives them a little bit clearer picture. So hopefully that will help people. A big goal with what we do here is to provide the highest possible quality that you could ever get and still have it free videos. And it's working okay. Folks in the chat room have asking, does this work with HDMI then to have this here? All of my equipment has always either gone from HDMI to SDI and then switched inside my switchers using SDI. SDI is a serial data interface, serial data interchange. I'm trying to remember the spec. It's a video connectivity using coax, 75 ohm coax, if I'm correct with that. Yeah, 50 ohm is networking coax, 75 ohm is video coax. So it's using, everything's coax connected. The Lumix camera, and this, I could spend an hour talking to you about cameras, 4K connectivity, and SDI, which, by the way, all three of those things don't go together very well right now at a price point that makes sense for what we're doing. So the Lumix does not have an SDI out. So behind that screen you can't see is a converter that converts from HDMI to SDI. The camera behind me that you're currently seeing me on has an SDI out. So it has an HDMI connection on it. I'm not even using it. We're going directly from the camera onto SDI. I've got tons of cables that go around this desk, down the walls, into a matrix switcher that's inside of this. There are 19-inch racks on the left and right of me. You can't even see them. So there are racks inside of here that are sound protected. And those racks have, inside one of those racks is a matrix switch. So all of my inputs come in via HDMI to one side of the matrix switch. All of my outputs, like the screen that's in front of me, like the screen that's to the left, like the streaming system you see, is also coming out via SDI and into those systems. And I've got a streaming box running Windows 10 with an SDI adapter card in it that's receiving SDI directly and sending it to you. So that matrix switch allows me at any time to switch between any of those video systems to any of those outputs with multiples of those if I wanted to. I could take one input and send it to multiple outputs, which I do. So all of this is to say this entire system has been revamped over these last couple of years. We've got tons of things that are in here that are new and different. So hopefully you will see the difference in the final product. You will see the difference visually. I didn't change anything with the audio chain, at least not yet. So audio-wise, it's the same. There's no difference. Same mic, same mixer, same audio processing I'm doing, which is very little. I don't do much audio processing at all. Take a little bit of the top off, get rid of some of the hiss, that kind of thing. But mostly you will start to see a little more video, focus on the video, focus on the right color correction, a lot more professionalism because I have more professional cameras now. That's the difference. When you have a camcorder that you picked up at Best Buy, literally and stuck up there and used, you can't control very much of that system. So now I've got a lot more control over this. Thank you for asking. Quickly back to the phones, because I'm coming up to a hard stop myself. But thank you for holding for so long, 914. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, first name is On, calling from New York.
Oh, welcome, New York. What can we do for you?
Hey, first and foremost, thank you so much for your service and your videos. I mean, this is an amazing service. I've been looking into doing CompTIA for some time now, and still on the verge of going for it or not. I'm actually kind of on the edge, and, I was watching some other videos online stating that, if you're into technology, if you're into IT, and, you know computers, which I consider myself do. I mean, I've been building PCs since I was 16. That you should look for more of a vendor-specific certs, Microsoft cert or Cisco cert or something like that. So kind of discouraged me, but at the same time, I'm pretty much at the end of my studying cycle for the A+. So I'm like, and I also was thinking, as far as the end goal, you mentioned previously, several times that you should have some sort of an outlook or a goal that you're trying to achieve at the end of that, which I thought to myself, I really don't. I'm trying to get the certification and then go from there. So I just wanted to hear your advice on that, and what you would suggest a person like me, and how I should go about going forward from this point.
I don't envy your position. If you go out and do research on, if you type into Google, should I get a CompTIA A+ certification, you will have people violently on both sides of this fighting and telling you yes and no just as strongly. It's remarkable. We sort of do this to ourselves in the industry. I don't know that this is unique to IT, but people get very passionate about what they feel and what they think is the right thing for you, and they will tell you what the right thing for you is. But none of us know what the right thing for you is. Only you know what the right thing for you is. Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you the right place for you to go, and neither can anyone else. We can give you some ideas and some suggestions, and I think you're already thinking through it in your mind, and I think you should do what I requested or suggested to the other caller, which is, yes, have a look at where you want to be. And we're not talking about that crazy question they ask you in an interview, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself next? That's the question you need to ask. What do you want to do next? Because there's a path to get there. It's not like that happens overnight. Oh, I want to go into my new job tomorrow, of course. No, you have to build these blocks that will get you to where that next thing is. So figure out what that is. Maybe it's to become a system administrator, a server administrator. Get that first job working on a help desk. Stay there for a year and then get a job working with servers or networks, or there's a stepping stone that you can work towards. So that I do recommend that you do that. The second thing I do is think about what you feel the certification is going to do for you. If you think that your next step is going to be getting on with a help desk, look at what the help desks in your area want to hire. Do they want somebody with an A+ certification? Do they prefer somebody who has a Microsoft certification? Do they prefer someone with a Red Hat certification? I don't know. You don't know until you look at that and figure out those pieces. The other thing that I will say, just sort of at a kind of to put a bow on it, and the thing that people never seem to mention in these videos where they say, should you get A+ certified or not, is what about your personal knowledge? What about the things you're learning when you go through the certification? Very often, we're very much concerned about getting the paper. We're concerned about getting the job or getting the next job. What about your personal knowledge on this? What about you getting better as a technologist? And people seem to dismiss the A+ many times just outright. Why would you take that? That is a silly certification. These are the same people, by the way, that could not troubleshoot their system if it booted up and they had a bad boot sector. They wouldn't know how to install Windows. They don't have that. They've never gone through the A+. They've only heard other people saying it's a horrible certification, so therefore it must be. There is value to the knowledge that is in the A+, whether you get the certification or not. So having that personal knowledge of the technology cannot be dismissed. And in fact, it may help you learning the A+ fundamentals. It will certainly help you if you go get a Microsoft certification. It will certainly help you if you go get a Red Hat certification. So there's that may be the beginning of the stepping block for whatever it is you want to do.
Right. Okay. Wow, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I have learned a lot just by watching some of your videos and other videos that I've been doing, practice tests and all that. So I completely agree with you there. Now, as far as after doing the A plus, I mean, I have a degree in business and information science, so
Okay.
nothing information technology related. But what kind of positions would you suggest that I look for just to get into IT, just to kind of open up my area here is into IT after completing and hopefully passing the A plus certification?
The answer to that, and a well-qualified answer to that, is anything you'd like. And I'm speaking specifically as someone who has a degree in business management, not a degree in IT, not a degree in business information systems, not a degree in business with IT, not a degree with business with a little IT on the side, just pure business management.
Okay.
The college in many ways is certainly going to teach you things about the world and about business in general, and about, in some cases, IT and some aspect of IT, although colleges still don't do a great job at bridging the gap between IT and what IT really is. They kind of give you a broad brush and kind of put you out the door. But the concept to me was more of, people see the degree and say, oh, you're someone who's trainable. This is great. You went through 4 years of something where you were very trainable, and it looks like you're really interested in technology. Let's have you do this. And off we go to the races. Until I really did this job that I'm doing, until I really went on my own doing this, I really didn't use my business degree. So I went through about 30 years without using my business degree. Finally, I can use it. But in reality, I was using it the whole time. People understood that, well, you made it through a pretty aggressive training program from that university, and they gave you a paper that says you were pretty smart. So let's have you do some of these things because, and I mentioned this to another caller, we're sort of making this stuff up as we go along. In 5 years, there will be all new technologies that nobody knows about today. So how are they supposed to teach it anywhere? So if you become the expert in that technology and you know more than anybody else, you're now the person that people are going to go to for help with that technology.
Right. Makes sense. Excellent. Hey, thank you very much for taking my call. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you calling. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's, I apologize. We got one more call, and I can take that one last call. I've got a hard stop. Oh, by the way, people also talking in the chat room. I do have a Discord. I check in on it. I've not been promoting it. I have plans to do things with it, but you're welcome to join it. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. So there you go. And you can get there. Let's quickly go to the 912 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is David from Jacksonville.
David, just around the corner. Jacksonville, Florida, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Welcome. What can we do for you, sir?
So I was currently actually watching your live video, and I just decided to call in because I was actually trying to find my path to becoming a pen tester. And funny enough, you had mentioned something about being mentioned something about having a strong foundational strong foundation in networking.
Right.
So I got that. I took a little note about that. But I was starting from the Sec Plus side. Now, does that negate the foundation of networking, or is it doable? Because I've been watching the A plus, I've been watching the Network plus, I've been watching the Security plus, but currently at the moment I'm a college student who's majoring in IT security. So everything is more focused towards the security.
Right.
Security.
Yep.
But it's kind of like a confusing route because I'm talking to people in the industry, I'm listening to what the teachers are saying, the professors are saying, and I'm listening to you. So it's kind of hard to gauge what the right path is. What I'm saying is.
The challenge we have with security, IT security in general, it is so broad. It is enormous in scope because you have, like for instance, pen testing is something that's a personal interest of yours. Pen testing has a set of skills that you need to be able to do it well. Not just a knowledge of networking, but perhaps more scripting and understanding of the underlying operating system than is necessary than other parts of security. Other parts of security have a focus on the fundamentals of firewalling, for example. I just mentioned earlier that I spent 7 years as a senior SE for a next generation firewall company. My sole focus was understanding everything that firewall could do. And even then, after 7 years, I didn't have a complete knowledge of everything that device could do, because once you start peeling back the onion, it keeps peeling and keeps peeling and keeps peeling. There's an enormous amount of information you would need to know just in one single box, much less an entire series of products sold by a particular company. So you can really get into the details of a single thing. You could become an expert in a SIM and be a wanted man anywhere you go. People love people who understand a SIM and can pull in all the data, properly parse it, properly manage the data, and create the reports and be able to understand what's happening from a security perspective. Same thing about installing the firewall. I was someone who showed people how to use the firewall and that it would solve their problems. There was another group of people I worked with. Their sole job in life was to travel from place to place and install the firewall. These were very knowledgeable people who were extremely well paid. So don't be so worried, at least in the scope of what you're doing right now, with being so specific about where you're going with that IT security thing. The goal of your instructors right now, the goal of your professors in college, is to give you a little bit of taste of everything. And then you're going to figure out once you get out that you're probably not going to start as a pen tester. Those jobs aren't really entry level. You're usually going to start in networking or help desk, and then you're going to eventually follow that path because you have an interest in that. That will get you to eventually the pen testing or whatever that aspect of security is. So don't worry so much about don't worry so much about the details yet. Kind of focus on the broad scope that your university is giving you. Kind of pull in as much of that as you can. Because the reality is once you start down a road, you're going to start focusing on those individual pieces yourself. You're going to start grabbing onto the nuances that you missed in college and learning more about those technologies as they go. And as I mentioned, all this is going to change again in 5 to 10 years anyway. If you have the fundamentals down, you'll be able to change along with it without a problem.
Yeah, I think for most college students like me, from that 20 to 22 range, like they get their degree and basically it's like the fundamentals that were given in college is kind of just irrelevant because they don't have the experience, basically, like you just said. So
it's kind of tough. It's a give and take. They have to do something to be able to give you a concept of this, but they're giving you the concept without having the foundation behind it. So sometimes you don't exactly understand how all of these things tie together. But as I mentioned, don't worry about that so much. Get those fundamentals down, understand the pen testing they're giving you, go through those pen testing labs they're giving you, get a feel for the other aspects of these things that you're learning, but learn as much of it as you can. You're going to start using pieces of it as you go. Like me, you may find you get out of college and use very little. I got a business management degree from Florida State, and then ended up being someone who delivered printers. That didn't seem like it was a good use of my degree at the time. But eventually it turned into someone who was installing hard drives. I was learning more about the hardware. I started installing network operating systems with NetWare. I started installing servers. I moved into workstation management. So all of these things build on each other. And without having that foundation that you're getting now, you're kind of freewheeling it as you go. At least you've got some structure to it.
Wow, that sounds great. All right, thank you very much Professor Messer. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. That's a great place to be. You're just starting out. You're just getting it going. I love it. Well, I've come to the end of me starting out on this one. I've got to close down the shop, as they say, and get things done. I appreciate everyone calling in. Would not be able to do any of this without you being here for the first hour and answering questions, without your chatting in the chat room, without your topics that you bring up on the phone calls. Thank you so much. Make sure you come back next month or even next week. We do our Network Plus study group on Wednesday of next week. You can always check professormesser.com/calendar for that. I want to thank you for being here, and thank you every time that you're here. We love doing these, and we love having you here with us. And we will see you next time on the A Plus Study Group.